As we are quickly approaching the time of year, or I guess any time of year, depending on when you're watching this, when we may become inundated with a sudden urge to do such things as deep cleaning or decluttering, I thought this would be a good time to address the absolute abomination that is modern textile recycling, or more correctly, the utter lack thereof. A lot of us are trying to be good, conscientious citizens by recycling our waste correctly, but a fair few frustrating reports around the world are coming back letting us know that, more often than we would like to think, our current recycling practices are sadly not as optimized as we may have been led to believe. I will focus on textile recycling specifically here, just because that is most relevant to this channel, and frankly, because the whole recycling industry is a bit too big to try to tackle in a hopefully bite-sized video. And if you thought we could solve the problem by simply donating our unwanted textile to yonder local charity shop, I have some bad news for you that I will get back to in a bit. But, and this is a big one, I hope you do not take away from this video that I am blaming you or any other single consumer for the capitalist fast fashion hellscape we are currently mired in. This is merely meant to educate and hopefully provide some practical suggestions you could try out for yourself should you have the time and the will to do so. The issue of recycling is not just through fault or ill will of waste management companies, far from it, but also because modern fast fashion, from fiber production and cloth to construction and availability, has never been designed with recycling in mind. This goes back to practices like planned obsolescence, where businesses want customers to continually replace their items, for instance by designing them to break after a certain time or going out of fashion. Any product that is a combination of several different types of materials poses a challenge when we wish to recycle them. This is as true for electronics made up of plastics, precious metals and glass as it is for clothes made of mixed fibers, different fabrics and embellished with buttons, zippers, studs, sequins, etc. In an ideal world, items would be designed to be easily disassembled into their individual components at their end of life, so each could be recycled accordingly. But in practice, this is near impossible to do on an industrial scale, with wealthier nations often washing their hands of the problem by illegally shipping them off to less affluent nations and calling it recycling. A distressingly large part of recycling is really just greenwashing though, reminding us that one of the biggest impacts we can have in that regard is to try to reduce and be mindful of our consumption from the offset. Plus demanding policy change and holding producers accountable, but I digress. But lo, I hear you cry. What about all that recycled polyester that is currently being lauded about by many fast fashion brands as the new solution to sustainable fashion? Well, most of that so-called recycled polyester is made from recycled plastic bottles and, in some cases, ocean waste. And while their reuse might seem honorable, it can only be done once. Personally, I take some issue with labeling that as true recycling, as there is no actual cycle involved. It's more like a detour on the way to the landfill or incinerator. Speaking of landfill, only 12% of textile waste globally ends up even being attempted recycled in the first place. So this isn't even relevant for the remaining 88% of textiles that gets thrown away, or almost 100 million tons per year globally. It also bears to mention that, when tested, 60% of the fabrics claiming to be recycled polyester were actually just virgin plastic. And organic cotton suffers significant fraud as well, because the textile industry is a discombobulated, lying piece of... If we look back to at least the 18th century, while the amount of waste each household produced was significantly less than it is now, there was nevertheless enough of especially two kinds of waste to give rise to their namesake, the rag and bone man. This was a poor, often working class person, often fallen on hard times, who would comb through neighborhoods on foot or by cart to scavenge rags, bones and metal from other people's unwanted waste. This was, while given a bit of a side-eye at the time, generally considered an honest occupation and even protected by law in some places. In 1813, Benjamin Law was the first to manufacture and probably invent a textile known as shoddy. This was a cloth made from wool collected by the rag and bone man. The seams would be cut off, while the big pieces of old cloth were ground into a mass and respun into new yarn and cloth with a little bit of fresh wool added just to help with the structural integrity. This process, as is still a problem today, produced cloth with much shorter fibers than fabric made from new materials, meaning they would get holes and wear out much faster. But shoddy was cheap, it was accessible, so it had a market with the people who had to live hand to mouth. But it didn't last and required frequent mending, which is yet another reminder of just how expensive it is to be poor. This is why, even for the meager 1% of textile waste that is still recycled in a mechanical way similar to this, it is not used for new clothing, but rather downcycled into things like industrial carpets or insulation. This, as well as industrial rags, still remains the easiest way to recycle textiles made up of several different fibers, such as polyester and cotton, because the energy and technology required to separate the fiber into their source component is far greater than the cost of just digging up more oil and making more polycotton. There are some chemical and biochemical attempts to solve this issue, especially for polycotton, because it is one of the most common synthetic fiber blends. But as far as I can tell, they have yet to manage to upscale any of these methods to a viable industrial level. Plus, chemicals and the handling and disposal of such is always an added environmental problem whenever any industrial process requires lots of them. The irony that these synthetic blends the fashion industry so love to push on us are some of the hardest to recycle is not lost on me. Let us move on to a very different type of textile repurposing, the second-hand clothing market. This may seem an easy solution to the various issues laid out above, but it comes with some significant drawbacks. First of all, as a society, we are, dare I say, a bit too aware of the ability to donate clothes and items to secondhand shops to help alleviate our conscience, when we then make our way to a clothing retailer to buy more new clothes. We like to think our donated clothes will end up being loved by someone else, but for most of them, that simply is not true. On the whole, a lot more clothes are donated secondhand shops than is ever bought or make it out of the shop itself. In Norway, only 10% of the donated clothes to the biggest secondhand reseller actually ends up in the shops. In the UK, that number is only between 1 and 3%. And not all the clothes in the secondhand storefronts ends up actually getting sold. Plus, there's a significant level of privilege in having the time to trawl through multiple shops on the search of something one wants to wear, as well as significant challenges in terms of the sizes typically available. In my personal experience, having clothed myself almost solely from secondhand shops for most of my life, a lot of the clothes are quite poor quality and often feature interesting prints and designs. If I could find more than 2 pairs of trousers that I didn't mind and that actually fit me on any given trip, I would have considered it a very lucky run indeed. So we donate more than we buy. meaning most of the time donating clothes may alleviate guilt, but most often it's just another detour on a garment's inevitable journey to the landfill. There is also the ethical issue of shipping a lot of these donated clothes off to less wealthy nations such as Kenya and Ghana, where the influx of used clothes not only decimates the local textile industry and traditions, but even there, 40% of the used clothes we send them are deemed such poor quality that they just go straight to landfill there. At the same time, this second-hand market employs thousands of people, leaving the government with quite a dilemma. So let's look at some of the other options available to us as consumers and local community members. After all, we all need to clothe ourselves unless we wish to face much public scrutiny and potential danger. I think the most important thing we can do is look for items that we really like and that can be styled in many different ways. If you are not able to tell a poorly made garment from a well-tailored one, you may still be able to tell if you'd like to use it to many different occasions. If we are able to buy fewer, higher quality items from the offset, it makes everything else easier down the line. Getting used to wearing the same garments over and over and learning to repair said items, even in the most rudimentary of fashions, is another way we can fight back against consumerist culture and the fear of missing out that fast fashion likes to push on us. But when an item of clothing has been mended, repaired and used to the very end of its wearable lifespan, there are still some things we can do to keep it from the landfill a little bit longer. The first thing that comes to mind is patchwork and rags, but there are some truly creative individuals out there making wholly new garments, and a lot of it is really, really good. In the spirit of this, I really must mention Shannon Makes' remake of Bilbo's glorious patchwork dressing gown as seen in the beginning of The Hobbit. It is chef's kiss. Buttons and zippers can be unpicked and reused. Textiles can be cut into rags or reused into patchwork or quilting projects, or used as stuffing for a new pillow. After all, quilting and patchwork were historically not typically made with fabrics specifically designed and purchased for that purpose. So in summary, the textile industry is a hot mess and should not be allowed to remain largely unsupervised. But until such a time as citizens demand that governments and industries start cooperating and perhaps become a bit more conscious of their responsibility, we can at least reduce our participation by reducing our consumption from more conscious purchases to repairing them when they need it and repurposing them when they no longer serve their function. This does, yes, require a certain level of attention be put to how we will reuse an item already when we purchase it. Because I don't know if you have ever had the misfortune of trying to mend a synthetic plastic abomination, but just the memory of the painful squeaks as I tried to pull the needle through is enough to send strong sensory shivers down my spine. That is to say, thank you so very much for watching if you made it all the way here to the end. Fight the consumerist powers that be by doing something to engage with your local community or mend a much worn and loved item in your wardrobe. To encourage such behavior, I am giving away this littlest of sewing kits made from scrap materials from my workroom and equipped with small snips, thread, a few safety pins and needles, as well as some buttons. You will have to source your own thimble though, as these things come in different sizes for different humans. The giveaway will run until the 4th of March 2023, 2 p.m. Norway time, and the winner must respond within 24 hours or I will have to draw a new one. Simply follow the link in the description if that is of interest to you, or make one for yourself. They were really quite quick to stitch up. Do recommend. I totally put the velvet ribbon on the wrong way around though, but then again it does protect the velvet while it's in a pocket. Whoever said I knew what I was doing? Madam Awkward strikes again. Okay, I'm done.